What's up guys, Tyler Yasuda here with Tytaniumfitness. Today's video is going to be sort of the third iteration of my steroids versus natural series. If you haven't seen part 1 and part 2, I'll put links here. And just real quick, part 1 was sort of a comparison between enhanced athletes or top level enhanced athletes versus top level drug free athletes. So just sort of so you can see the difference that it might make, the drugs versus steroid free or drug free. And the second video was sort of my morality behind not using, and that was sort of more of a personal video. Today's video is going to be, I guess, a bit of a combination of both. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at a study. We're gonna look at the data, and then I'm gonna go into why I think this data is relevant to us. So the study that we're looking at today is, the title is the effects of super physiologic doses of testosterone in muscle strength and size in normal men. The study was published in 1996 in the New England Journal of Medicine. The study was led by Shalender Bosson. I'm sure I pronounced that incorrectly. But the reason I mentioned that is because this guy has been doing research in this sort of subject from before 1996 all the way up until present day. So he knows his stuff when it comes to the subject matter of using anabolic steroids or supplemental testosterone as far as sports, muscle size and strength and all that kind of stuff. Now a little bit of background before we get started looking at the data. I just want to say that I know that some of you might be wondering whether or not this study is reliable because it is from 1996. But I will say that I think the technology they had access to back then to do their measurements, it's not so much different, or it wouldn't make so much of a difference than the technology that we have today. I mean, when they're measuring fat-free mass, back then in this study they still use dual energy X-ray analysis, which is the same thing, or which is still sort of the benchmark today in terms of accuracy. DEXA scan, I think I mentioned that in a previous video before. And I mean, if you really want to, I'll put a link over here to the study. You can look over the methodology yourself. One more thing to consider, guys, is that in order to get your study or your research published in a journal like the New England Journal of Medicine, something prestigious like that, you have to go through multiple months of basically peer reviewing. So you send in your work to a panel of your peers, and they review it, and they tell you what you did wrong, and they send it back, or they might reject it completely and make you redo the study. And this sort of process goes on and on until either your work gets published or it gets rejected completely. So it's not easy getting your work published in a journal like this. In this study, they looked at 4 groups of men. I mean, they collected, I think, 43 men. I don't know if all of them stuck with the trial throughout the entire thing, but they divided them into 4 groups. 2 non-training groups. One of these non-training groups received a placebo. The other received 600 milligrams of testosterone NN per week. They had 2 training groups. The training groups were prescribed a training regimen, and keep in mind, it's not anywhere near as intense or as extensive as a bodybuilding or a competitive bodybuilder or physique athlete's training might be, but it was, they did have to control for variables, so they had to control the regimen. And of these 2 groups, one received a placebo and the other received 600 milligrams of testosterone NN weekly. Another thing I should mention is that they controlled for height, age, weight. I think for diet, they controlled for caloric intake and protein intake. I'm going to put up a picture of a table from the study that pretty much summarizes what I think is the most relevant information for our use. And basically what it is a table of the change in body weight, fat-free mass, muscle size and strength before and after the 10 weeks of treatment. And you can stare at this table as long as you'd like. I mean, there's a lot of information going on this table, so if you want to look it over, either go to that link with the study or pause the video now and look over it on your own. But it's a little bit more helpful for us. So we have this quote here. Basically what the quote says is, well, direct quote is, the men treated with testosterone but no exercise had an increase of 3.2 kilograms in fat-free mass, and those in the placebo plus exercise group had an increase of 1.9 kilograms. The increase of the testosterone plus exercise group was substantially greater, averaging 6.1 kilograms. The percentage of body fat did not change significantly in any group. What does that mean for us? Basically, the 2 points that I want to point out especially is that the group that was supplementing testosterone without training gained 3.2 kilograms fat-free mass in 10 weeks. And compare that to the 1.9 kilograms gained by the placebo plus training group. So if you take this data for what it is, and the statement for what it is, basically you could think, or you could conclude, that somebody who is supplementing testosterone without training, they could expect to gain more fat-free mass, more lean body mass than somebody who is natural with training. Granted, like I said before, the training regimen isn't as intense or as extensive as a physique athlete or a top level physique athlete. But on the other hand of that is the amount of drugs used in this trial are nowhere near the amount that would be used in a top level competitor in the NPC, WBFF, Musclemania, whatever it is. I mean, these guys are using not just anabolic steroids, and definitely not in this moderate of a dose. They're using anabolic steroids, growth hormone, insulin, whatever it is, whatever they want. So I mean, it goes both ways, sort of, that neither side is as extreme as it would be, whether that be for the drug-free or the using athlete. Now, I don't want any of you guys to think that I'm trying to discourage you from staying natural, because you guys know I'm a lifetime drug-free athlete myself, and that's sort of what this channel is about, is drug-free bodybuilding. And I definitely don't want you guys to think that just because the drugs can make a huge difference for you, I don't want you to think that I'm encouraging you to use them, because you still have to consider, and I mean, this is something that a lot of people like to disregard just because nobody likes thinking about it, nobody likes talking about it, but there are severe, extreme health side effects to using drugs. Maybe not in physiologic doses like in TRT. You might be okay with the supervision of a doctor, but that's a completely different topic. What I'm talking about is using performance-enhancing drugs like anabolic steroids for the sake of competing. The amount of drugs that you'd be taking at a high level are so much that you would be significantly decreasing your lifespan and your longevity. So if you don't have the moral objection to using drugs, then you still have to consider that you're not going to live as long as you might have. And to me, that's definitely not worth it. The main reason I'm making this video, and I realize that I'm going to take a lot of flack for this, but the main reason for this video is because I'm tired of hearing guys that are competing in unregulated organizations, or guys that are using, I'm tired of hearing them say that they work as hard as me or my drug-free counterparts. They always say this thing like, you can't just inject steroids and sit on your ass and do nothing and expect to make progress. But that's just not true. I mean, look at the data. There was a specific group that was supplementing a moderate dose of testosterone, and they literally didn't train at all, and they still made more progress than the group that was training without testosterone. A lot of people, what they call this is anabolic hypertrophy, and basically what that means is that there's a certain amount of muscular growth that you will get from using drugs regardless of your training. It's a considerable amount. For this group, in 10 weeks it was 3.2 kilograms. That's more than I would expect to gain in like 2 years, maybe 3 years. I know I shouldn't be making generalizations, but I feel like 9 times out of 10, these guys that are claiming, these unregulated guys that are claiming that they work so hard, 9 times out of 10, if you talk to them, they know nothing about the science or empirical evidence behind training and dieting, whatever it is. Basically what they do is they follow conventional wisdom that they learned from the guys that preceded them. That's part of what makes it so hard to learn things in sort of this fitness world or whatever it is. There's all these huge guys that are using, they'll tell you, for one thing, a lot of them will tell you that they're natural, and you'll believe them when you're sort of young and naive. And the problem there is that you'll believe them, you'll take their advice, and you'll think that you can get the same results as them. But what they don't realize, and what a lot of other people don't realize, is that their advice really doesn't apply to natural athletes, because they'll never know, and I guess most people will never know, how much of a difference it exactly makes in terms of the anabolic hypertrophy. But there's no denying that there is a significant amount of hypertrophy just from taking drugs, regardless of the training. The idea is that if somebody is supplementing testosterone, they will make progress, they will make gains, they will gain lean body mass, fat-free mass, regardless of whether or not they're working hard. I don't encourage you guys to put people down for the decisions that they make, even if you don't agree with them. But if an unregulated athlete or an enhanced athlete ever comes up to you as a drug-free athlete and tells you that they work harder than you or just as hard as you, and you don't think it's true, you've got data to show them. That's about it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this, hope you found it helpful. Share it if you want, or at least share the study. Don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Subscribe!